Hello and welcome back to Ideagen's 17 Days of Sustainability. Today I have with us Harley Tat and Scott Lair from the Underground Group. Harley and Scott, welcome.
Nice to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are looking forward to the insights you bring to our audience. So to just jump right into it, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your roles and responsibilities at the Underground Group?
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott Lair, I'm the founder and CEO of the Underground Group. We are a content innovation studio. And, my responsibility is really the overall strategy and success of the business.
And my name is Harley Tat, and I'm the Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of Underground Group with Scott. And, I spent several decades in the television business. And one thing that we started to see as time kind of moved on is that, major corporations and brands were becoming almost like cable and broadcasters in that they had a directive, they had current messaging that they wanted to kind of get out in an interesting way. And so Scott and I started Underground Group, and one of the areas we kind of focus on is, storytelling and getting brands to get their message out in the most emotional and compelling way through stories that are aligned with their core DNA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're glad to both have you here today. And that leads me to my next point. And there are so many ways that leaders and luminaries try to change the world. So posing this both to you, why is storytelling so incredibly important to affect change around the world?
Storytelling is incredibly important, especially right now. Obviously, there's an abundance of content out there. It used to be there were a few television networks, and then there were a few networks and streaming services on the web and OTTs, etc. But now more than ever, it's important to tell stories that cut through, not only in a way that is emotional, is compelling, but there's just so much content out there that's being shared all the time. And the pie has been sliced so thinly that, if your message doesn't cut through, it can get lost. And so we believe that storytelling and looking at a brand story, a corporate story in a new way, and coming up with something that's very entertaining, engaging, and compelling is your best shot at reaching the audience that you want.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think stories move people, right? Stories make people think and feel and act and do. And that's what you're trying to get to here. And I think authentic stories really connect audiences and connect people and inspire action. So they're very important.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. What better place to tell a story than in Hollywood? And with Hollywood being such a powerful medium, many different people with different stories to tell, some positive and some negative. But how can it be used for good?
Well, I think Hollywood is a mirror of the world, and it's global, just like Ideagen. And it really mirrors what is happening in society. And all the broadcasters look for content at different times and have different needs depending on what they feel will resonate with their audience. And a lot of times that goes hand in hand with what's happening in the world. And so if we're in a global pandemic, maybe some of the content, some of these films and television shows want to reflect, something that's interesting in that space. Or if we're talking about female empowerment, or any one of the UN's global goals could probably fall into the messaging that Hollywood can mirror. And I think things work best in Hollywood when they are relatable and when they mirror what's happening in the world. And so in saying that, by understanding that and by looking out to see what is in fact going on, Hollywood can do good by telling, informative, entertaining, and emotional stories that best reflect the times.
Yeah, I mean, Harley is the Hollywood guy, and I'm more of the content and digital marketing person. But from my experience in enjoying what's output, I think it goes back to what I said before. Is stories, they move people, they move you to action, they move you to think differently, and they inspire you. And I think the world could use a little inspiration these days, and there's always been a lot of that coming out of Hollywood sometimes. And, I think now's a good time for more of it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The world can certainly use a little bit more of that. And so you had touched upon it briefly, but do you believe that we can achieve the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals? And then how can Hollywood kind of play a role in achieving that?
I'm hopeful. I think, you want to maintain hope. And, I'm a father of two teenagers, and I see them motivated, engaged towards action. And that gives me hope that the future generation and the young people can help get us there. We're going to need everybody, and certainly, it's sort of all hands on deck. As far as how Hollywood can help, I'll let Harley answer that one.
Look, I think it all comes down to informative, compelling, and inspirational content. And look, Hollywood was built on the story. And I think that if we are a reflection of the times, and if we are a mirror to what is going on in the world, I think there's an incredible opportunity for writers and directors and producers to look at that and be inspired themselves to tell great stories about real life that will resonate with audiences. And in turn, there's an opportunity there to make change.
Absolutely. Scott said it is an all hands on deck moment, and you really want to be able to resonate with those audience to enact that change. And so switching avenues a little bit to current situation, has the global pandemic, in your opinion, changed Hollywood in media? How exactly? And is that change permanent?
I think anytime there's a disruption in the world, anytime we're going through some form of hardship or challenging times like we are right now, it always breeds opportunity. And I think with the global pandemic, people have to be quick to think on their feet, and they have. Productions have to be modified to make sure that we create a safe environment for people in which to work. I think we have to think differently about how we conduct interviews, how we shoot scenes. And so I think it's a good thing, and it gets people to think differently. And I think Hollywood has changed, but it's a very nimble medium, and the people behind the scenes in Hollywood are nimble. And it's a time to be creative, and it's a time for these creative minds to kind of look at new ways to do things. I mean, we found for our company, we've been able to kind of course correct during these times and kind of come up with new ways in which to keep our productions going in the television business, as well as with the various brands that we work with. And I think coming out of this, some of the things that we've learned and some of the things that we've attempted and tried and that have been successful will be things that will continue long after the global pandemic has subsided and there's a vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the pandemic has really changed everything in some way. And, in regards to Hollywood, in regards to media, the consumption of content, the public consumption of content, whether it's in movie theaters or other public venues, that has stopped pretty much altogether across the globe. But the overall consumption of content has skyrocketed. So, I think that has really inspired people to think a little bit differently about how are you going to deliver and reach your audience and really reach them where they are, rather than trying to pull them or push them to somewhere public, or to a movie theater or to some other venue. And so I think, potentially new business models, and you're seeing some of that with the release of movies, 100% digitally. But I think, now there's so much content out there. So how do you figure out how to find that audience and deliver content to them, to the right audience, where they are consuming?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing from both of you, which is it's great, is the perspective of, being creative positively, looking at this pandemic and responding to it. There are a whole bunch of negative aspects to it, no doubt about that. But how can we respond to it with a new business model, with a new play, with a new way to get this content to our viewers and to our consumers? And so you had touched upon it a little bit, but could you go in a little bit more depth about how your work and perspective have forever been changed by this global circumstance?
Well, look, I think that for many, many years, production has had a great deal of people behind the scenes, very talented people behind the scenes that make the product, tell the stories. And one of the things we've had to do during this time is, we can't have as many people on set. We can't have people in close proximity to one another. And so we've had to come up with ways in which we can still keep the quality high, tell the great story in the best possible way, make sure that the content doesn't suffer, but look at new efficiencies and look at new ways. I'll just give you a small example. We're based in Los Angeles, and we interviewed a celebrity comedian in Atlanta recently. And in the old days, pre-pandemic, 6 months ago, we would have flown to Atlanta. We would have had our camera crew set up. We would have had 5 or 6 people there to do this interview. And during the pandemic, to make sure that we were COVID compliant and had the proper social distancing mandates in order, we were able to hire a local crew, direct the shot, set all the camera angles remotely, and then actually had our celebrity in the chair, and we conducted the interview from an iPad that was at eye level in the chair. And the end result was nothing different than if we were there in person. And that's one situation where, having now done this quite a few times in recent months, if we're doing an interview in New York, or we're doing an interview overseas, or what have you, we might think differently about flying a crew there, flying a person there, and we might be conducting that interview in a remote capacity, and the quality would still be just as high and just as great as it was before. And that's a small example, but I think everybody in the television and film production business are looking at ways like that where they can streamline, and I think those will kind of manifest in part of the natural workflow of things, if possible, as we move out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, from a business perspective, we're a small business, and these circumstances have been challenging for us, as they have been for most small businesses. And I think we've needed to be resourceful. We need to find new ways, to work with our customers where they're comfortable, where we're comfortable, and we're all adhering to the new reality of being virtual and being distant, but still being connected and close. Those are significant challenges, and you need to sometimes find completely new ways to address that and to do those things. And from just a general business perspective, I think, do you need an office? Can you be 100% virtual? Can we do the type of productions that have normally been done in a totally different way? And so I do think that for us, and probably for a lot of businesses, when we do come out of this thing, there'll be a new normal of ways that businesses conduct themselves, and hopefully we'll learn a lot from this process and be more successful because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating to hear how you both and the Underground Group has adapted to not have it hold you back, but to continue to conduct business and get that content out there. And Ideagen was holding in-person summits. Now we've gone to virtual aspect as well. And you're right, we are really starting to see a new normal. And so to kind of go off of that, one of Ideagen's main goals has been to foster cross-sector collaboration with the hopes of achieving innovation in different spaces. And so why do you both believe cross-sector collaboration and innovation is so vital to helping to solve some of the world's most vexing issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think complex problems, which these are, require collaboration and innovation. And most importantly, they require really buy-in throughout the entire ecosystem to affect change. If you are able to solve problems in a certain part of this issue, but don't get buy-in or don't have leadership or communication in a different part of it, you're not going to be successful. And I think, open communication and understanding of clarity around the issues and really clarity around everyone's role in how they can help solve problems and contribute to a successful end is very important. I think for us, communication, collaboration, getting buy-in from everybody who's involved in a project or throughout the entire, eco chain, is very important for having a successful project, successful engagement.
I also think that, to use the cliche adage that, grow or die, I think this is an opportunity for all of us to grow, to think differently, to look at new ways to do things, look at new ways to connect people, look at new ways to move people to action. And, I think these times in life really are opportunities to look at your own infrastructure and look at new ways to do things that, maybe you wouldn't have thought of in the past if something like a global pandemic didn't present itself.
Yeah, absolutely. That aspect of being able to grow, otherwise, you as you put it, you die, and that's a very good point. And I think that the Underground Group's leadership, Scott here, certainly played a heavy role in that. And so asking, why do you think effective leadership and innovation are so crucial now more than ever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the same sort of point that, the problems that we face today are so daunting and so complex and require so many moving parts to solve. You really need strong leaders to guide, affect change, to get traction and move people forward in a unified way to solve problems. I think, finding new ways to solve problems, being open to change, to listening, to new business models, innovative business models and approaches are so important, especially if you want young people to get involved and be part of it and to lead. I think, sticking to tradition and traditional models, will sometimes maybe disinfect or disaffect young people from getting involved. I think, so thinking outside the box and listening, I think, is critically important.
I also think that, we're fortunate that the global pandemic and all this virtual work and looking at new ways to talk to people, meet with people, conduct business, we're fortunate in that we're at a place with technology where we can do that. I mean, it wasn't that many years ago that we didn't have the bandwidth to move big files, move big video files. Not too long ago, if we were to look at a cut of a television show and you were in, the show came out of Los Angeles and you were in Dallas, it would be, sent overnight or FedExed or sent to you to look at on a DVD. But as technology has grown and as these new, streaming services have come about, and as the bandwidth has expanded to handle big files of media, at 4K and beyond, we're actually in a good place, because just think, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the global pandemic hits, some of these new services that we're all using, the one we're on right now, maybe wasn't around. Maybe there wasn't enough, the cloud services that weren't necessarily developed the way they are. And so we're lucky in that we've had technology, at this high level during this time, so that people all around the world could continue conducting business, shooting new content, in trying to achieve their goals.
Absolutely. And, speaking of daunting problems, or should I rather say goals, some say that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are quite daunting and, hard to achieve as is. And so what advice would you give to help achieve the United Nations 17 global goals?
Well, it's a big question also.
It is.
I think the way I would look at it is, goals need to be specific and measurable, right? You need to know where you're going in order to figure out how to get there, right? And if it's not clear, and it's hard to get everybody on the same page and sort of row the boat together. So I think clarity around what the goals are and specific and measurable is important. I think communication is key as well. Not just, talking and listening, but, making sure that all of the opinions get on the table at the right point, right? If somebody has an idea and they disagree with your idea, it's very critical to make sure that that conversation happens in the room or in the virtual room, rather than in small groups after the main conversation. I think it's really important to get all those dissenting ideas and all those, real ideas on the table and to be considered. And then I think, it goes back to leadership as well. Leaders need to lead. They need to think outside the box. They need to adapt and be nimble and flexible, and don't wait for somebody else to do something. Go out and do it.
I also think that awareness is key. The 17 global goals are fantastic. But we believe at Underground Group that awareness is really the secret. And we believe that through quality storytelling, we could educate and inform people to make change and to see what the issues are. And, nothing's more powerful than a story, a real story that you can connect with. And we believe that really good stories could really help the UN achieve their global goals, and help with the awareness and getting people invested in the cause.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you both more. Bringing awareness, connections, achievable aspects of the goals, those are all certainly very, very important. And that's what Ideagen we are hoping to try to do with these 17 days of sustainability. And to close it up, we thank you so much for your valuable insights. What is your post-summit ask for our global audience as we continue to change the world?
Harley, you want to take that?
Be good to one another.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that, I couldn't have said it better. So I think, we're all in this together. So
yes.
We're on a big ball floating in space, and we all have to be good to each other.
Short, sweet, and to the point. You can't ask for more than that. Absolutely. Harley and Scott from the Underground Group, we thank you so much for your time today and joining us for the Ideagen's 17 Days of Sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you.